This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup week of February 23rd, 2015. As usual, there are 6 different free items this week, but they are free this week only. So if when you watch this video, any of these items look useful to you, be sure to pick them up this week while they're still free. Links to each one of the 6 different items will be in the description. So first up is Creamsicle, which is a font. So this is a collection of 4 different fonts provided in OpenType font format, and I have them open inside Adobe Illustrator here to show it. So the one on top here is called Creamsicle Regular. The one below it is Creamsicle Chunky. This one is Melt, and the one below that is Creamsicle Shadow. So each of these different fonts is all very similar, as you can see here, but there's some slight differences. So I'll zoom on the top here, which is the regular version and probably the most useful to a whole bunch of different uses. If I zoom in really close to these letters, you can see that they have a little bit of a rough and textured edge. So that's kind of a neat addition on these that you might not know is there unless you zoom in a little bit closer. The chunky variation just kind of chunks off sections of letters to make them a little bit more simple, a little bit more low poly in their look. And the one below that, that is called Melt. Each of these letters has kind of a melting or drippy appearance to them. So if you're going for an effect where you want these letters to look like they're perhaps melting on a hot summer day, this might be a pretty cool way to go ahead and do that. And below that, there's the Creamsicle Shadow, which just adds a drop shadow to each one of these different letters. And I'll just zoom out a little bit here so that you can see it includes all the different numbers as well as the most basic of punctuation, so an exclamation point, $, question mark, period, as well as a cent sign. If I highlight over this quick and go to type and then glyphs, you can see everything that's included. It's pretty basic, so all the letters that I showed before, as well as these 4 different special characters right here. So I went ahead and typed out Free Goods Roundup just so you can see how this looks typed into a sentence. I think it looks pretty good when it's typed out. It looks very readable as well. So this should make a really good headline font. The space in between when you hit the space bar is pretty substantial. So if you want to make that a little bit lower, you can just highlight that space. Go to your character window, which you can get to by going to Window, Type, and then Character at the top here. And then you can adjust the tracking, which is a VA with a line pointing both directions. If I make this -100, for example, it'll just pull these together a little bit closer, but you can go ahead and just adjust stuff as you see fit to make it look the way you want it to. But I think this is a cool font, and it comes in 4 different variations, which is pretty rare to see in a free font offering, so that's a pretty huge bonus in this particular font. And if you think you'll have use for this font, either now or in the future, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is 64 Flatline Icons pack. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's a pack of 64 different icons in vector format, and the download includes both an EPS file, which I'm showing right here, as well as a JPEG, but the JPEG looks almost identical to this image right here with the background being flat on it. So to get the most use out of this, you're really going to want a vector program like CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a better look at how these look up close. The execution on all these icons looks pretty good. If I zoom in really close on some of these, like this handshake icon right here, you can see that there aren't any weird lines or connection points. It all looks very smooth and professionally done. I'm just going to zoom back out a little bit so I can keep on going down here. So if you're looking for a few different custom icons for whatever it is you're working on, there's a pretty decent selection of different icons here to pick from and use. My personal favorite of the bunch is probably this tie right here. I think it's pretty well done, and it's an icon that you don't tend to see a whole lot of. I always personally like icons of stuff that is a little bit different and not just the standard weather or speech bubble icons, but a good selection of stuff here. And once again, if you want to get the most use out of this possible, I'd highly recommend that you open up this file in a vector program like Adobe Illustrator, just so you can go in there and easily manipulate and resize all these different objects. But if these icons look useful to you, be sure to pick them up this week while they're still free. Next up is Minimal Infographic Kit. So this is a set of 6 different pages of infographics, and it's provided in both Illustrator as well as EPS formats. And if I scroll through each one of these different pages here, you can see that each one of these different pages has a pretty different look to it. So if you're looking for a really diverse set of infographics to use for your business, perhaps you don't want all of your infographic presentations to have a very similar look, this is a really strong pack for that because it does offer a ton of versatility. As I went through each of these, you can tell that they all have a pretty substantially different look to them. So that's really cool. You should get a whole lot of different varied use from these. And I should also note that a lot of the type in this is live. If I zoom in a little bit closer here to this descriptive text, I could change this up to be whatever it is I want it to be. Although I should also note that I don't have all these particular fonts that are needed for this pack installed on my computer. So on some of these pages like this one, for example, this looks like it's formatted wrong, but that's just because I don't have this particular font, in this case PT Sans, installed on my computer. But I'll just zoom in a little bit closer on some of these different elements here. So also included in this, you can tell there's a ton of different icons that you can go ahead and use. So even if you don't want to use these pre-made layouts, there are a lot of really cool icons and different borders and banner effects that you can go in here, pull and use, and you could really customize your own custom templates if you want to go ahead and do that using all these pre-made elements that are inside of here. Although as you can tell, it does work pretty well if you want to stay inside the different stylistic guidelines that they have set up. All these different elements on each one of these pages tends to work really well together. So if you mix and match from the same pages of elements, you should have a really strong base starting point to make whatever it is you want to make. Once again, some really cool icons on here. So be sure to check out each one of these different pages so you can go ahead and find what icons you might find most useful and go ahead and make changes or customizations based on that. There's a lot of different elements and color palettes to pick from, so be sure to check out this entire pack when you download it, figure out which ones you like the best, and then make your own customizations based on that. But if you're in the market for some infographics, I think this is a really cool place to start. As you can tell, there's a ton of stuff here to go in and check out, so this should keep you busy for quite a while. And if this looks like something you might have use for, be sure to pick it up this week so you can get it for free. Next up we have textured colorful backgrounds. So this is a set of 18 different JPEGs of textured backgrounds, and I went ahead and selected 6 at random here to show, as this will give a pretty good idea of what you can expect inside this pack. And if I go to image and then image size at the top here, it's roughly 3500 by 2400 pixels, so it should be plenty big for most applications. And I'll just quickly scroll through these different textures here so you can get a better idea of what they look like. A lot of them have almost a stucco or textured wall look to them, and the background textures of these do vary quite a bit as I scroll through these different options. For instance, this one looks a lot like a plaster wall. And I also did notice when I'm looking at these that a lot of the texture seems to be focused on the outside edges here, leaving the center a little bit more clean and open for placing your work inside. So if you want to overlay an illustration or a typography design in these, it should work pretty well. This particular background does a great job of showing that, where there is a lot of texture going on in the outside edges here, both in terms of a little bit of a dirty, grungy look here, and then on the right side, there's almost a stucco or plaster looking texture on the side here. So there is quite a bit of variance throughout these 18 different textures. So if the 6 I showed you look interesting, be sure to check out the entire pack. There are quite a few different options in both color as well as background texture for you to check out and use. And if you really like the texture on a particular image but you don't like the background color, that's really easy to change. Just hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac to bring up hue saturation. Make sure the preview button is checked, and then you can just adjust the hue. This one background could be used in a whole bunch of different colors to give us a whole lot more versatility. That way you can adjust the saturation as well as the lightness as well if you want to customize it that much further. But a pretty cool pack of 18 different background textures, and if these look like something you might have use for, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next is Zeroth, a responsive one-page theme. This is an HTML5 and CSS3 theme, which means you will need at least basic levels of coding knowledge to go in here and make changes. And this theme is also responsive, which means it should look good on no matter what kind of device you're looking at it on. And I did notice when I scroll up and down that it's very fluid. The movement's very fluid. It feels very quick. This entire website just feels very smooth as I scroll up and down. And this is a parallax scrolling theme, which means it is all on one page. So if I click on our focus, for example, it'll just zoom me up to that particular part of this website. So everything that you need is on the same page. And then you can just scroll up and down to see all the different content that's inside. And one thing, when you go down to the portfolio here, if you do click on an item in the portfolio, it does bring you to a totally separate page for that particular item. I actually kind of like that. A lot of one-page parallax scrolling themes sometimes won't bring you to a separate page for portfolio items. It'll just bring up a window with that image larger or something like that. But sometimes it's nice to have more room to go in there and write a whole bunch about whatever it is you are working on and give it a little bit more explanation as to what the project is all about and what you were thinking about when you made it. But I'll just keep on scrolling down here so you can see everything. There's a nice little spot to subscribe to an email list, a great spot for testimonials, which can be really huge in giving people a little bit more trust in what you are doing. There's a nice large map here. If you use your middle mouse button to scroll in or out, it actually zooms in or out on the map, so that's kind of a neat touch there. At the bottom here, there's a get in touch box with name, email, subject, and message. Pretty standard there. At the bottom here is a footer with different social icons as well as different ways to contact this particular business. And I'll just scroll back up here for some things that I didn't talk about very quickly. A great spot here to show off your team members. If you hover over one of the team members, it brings up a little spot for descriptive text about perhaps what that person's background is. And there's also a spot for name, title, as well as social icons for those people. There's an About Us section as well as a spot for packages. So if you do a subscription-based service, this can be really helpful to let people know what your different levels of service are and what benefits each one of those different levels brings. And I'll go back at the top here. There's a spot for our focus. So that's a nice spot to call out your company's or personal design practices strengths. And at the top here, there's just a quick couple calls to action where you can either go to our works, which will bring you to the portfolio, or if you click on our services, it'll bring you right to that our focus page. But I think this is a really well done theme. As I said before, when you scroll up and down, the movement is very smooth and solid, which sometimes on a parallax scrolling theme, it gets a little bit bogged down. It feels a little bit sluggish, but that is definitely not the case here. This is an extremely responsive and quick moving theme. So if you're on the lookout for a very professional looking portfolio that is also responsive and also doesn't require a CMS like WordPress, you want to go in there and code it yourself, this is a great fit for that. So if this theme looks like something you might have use for, be sure to pick it up this week. And last up is Vector Low Poly Alphabet. This is an alphabet of low polygon letters, and it's not a font that you can install. It's just each letter grouped on its own, so you can go ahead and move and rearrange these letters as needed to spell the different words that you're trying to create. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can get a better look at how these look up close. All these different letters have a pretty cool look to them, and the color choices are pretty smart throughout to give all these letters a nice 3D shape using very simple geometric forms. So I'll just scroll through a few more letters here before zooming back out. And to go ahead and just make your own custom stuff, I'll just drag out these letters very quickly here to type out the word free. It's pretty easy to do. If you hold down Alt or Option when you drag something, it'll just duplicate it automatically. So that makes it a little bit quicker to go in here and build custom letters. And they are provided in both Illustrator as well as EPS formats. And since they are vector, you can make them as big or as small as you want. So if you want to drag these into something like Photoshop, it should be pretty easy to do that. And the reason why Photoshop might be a little bit important, because the way these are constructed, changing the color of one of these letters won't be too easy because you have to go in here and change each one of these different polygonal shapes, which would probably take quite a bit of time. But if you were to construct a word inside of Illustrator and then bring that into Photoshop, you could just use the hue saturation feature inside Photoshop to very quickly change all these different letters to be whatever color it is you want to use. And I went ahead and just brought in one of their preview images from the website so you can kind of see how this looks in practice. I actually really like how these letters look when they're in white, and they stand off super nice when they're placed in this low poly background with the drop shadows between each one of the letters. This is a really cool effect and a really good example of what you could possibly do using this font. I kind of wish that they provided letters in this white color instead of this kind of off-white color, as I think the white might be a little bit more useful in a bunch of different situations. But that's certainly not a huge issue. You can go into Photoshop, like I said before, and very quickly and easily change the color of these letters to be whatever it is you want them to be. But a cool pack of low poly letters in vector format. So if these look useful to you, be sure to grab it this week while it's still free. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only, so be sure to check out the description for links to each one of the items if you want to pick any of them up. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please like and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thank you for watching.